right there.
Take your seats. We're going to get started here in 5 minutes. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the PC Party Leadership Candidate Debate here in Medicine Hat. My name is Sierra Garner. I'm the VP South for the Progressive Conservative Youth of Alberta, and I will be emceeing tonight. We would like to start off the evening by thanking all our volunteers who helped make tonight happen. So can we all give them a quick round of applause? As the PCYA representative here tonight, I would like to take a second to just mention the 265 project. The 265 project is an initiative to bring as many youth as possible to our leadership race. Each constituency gets 3 youth spots, as well as we have 2 campus clubs that have been recognized by the PCYA and the PCAA, and altogether we've gotten more than 160 youth and still have over 40 DSMs to go. So I think that's a great accomplishment and a great thing to get the youth involved here in our party. If you have any questions about that and you want to get youth involved, please feel free to give Emily Gilroy a call, an email, Facebook message, however you want to do so. She's also here tonight and she'll be able to answer any questions that you have. We're here tonight in Medicine Hat College to hear from all 3 leadership candidates and to help us, the members, decide who we will vote for in March in Calgary. Before we begin the evening, we'd just like to take care of a few housekeeping items. This event is being live streamed on Facebook, so if you have a phone, please make sure you turn it on vibrate or silent or turn it off. I know I don't do that, but if that's what you need to do, then go right ahead. And most importantly, let's just listen and learn to each of the individuals because they're dedicating a huge amount of time to come out and listen and learn from everybody as well. So here are the candidates who, one of them, we hoped to be our next Premier of Alberta. You have Dr. Richard Starkey, MLA and former Minister for Vermilion. Next, we have Jason Kenney, the former MP and federal minister from Calgary. And thirdly, we have Byron Nelson, lawyer and my favorite rugby enthusiast from Calgary. We're just going to take a second, if we could get Catherine to come up to the stage, and we're just going to take a quick photo op. Any media, this is your chance to now take a picture as well. Yeah, come up front here, guys. Perfect, gentlemen, you can all take a seat now. And I have the great honor, and for those of you who don't know, we have Party President Catherine here to speak and say a few words.
Thank you, Sarah. Good evening, Medicine Hat. It's my privilege to be here tonight to bring greetings on behalf of PC Alberta. I also will be introducing our moderator, Glenn Allen, to the stage. But before I do that, I want to take a few minutes to thank all of the volunteers in this room who have helped the party over the last 40 years to be the party that we are today. And you know, there's a lot of people from CA presidents to CA members to people that have stepped up after the election to help to keep the party going. So if I can get a round of applause for all those volunteers out in the crowd who have keep the party on its feet and onto a leadership race. It's been a massive achievement in the last few months just to get to today, so thank you. I also just want to say, you know, I'm a newcomer to this party. I joined this party in actually 2014 in our last leadership race. I was a journalist before then, so I'd never belonged to a political party before. And you know, one of the things that drew me to the PC Party of Alberta was just the people who help run this party. They're passionate about the province, the party, and public service. And those are big things to me, and that's what drew me to help the party. And after May 5th, 2015, I was one of those people who stood up and helped the party get back up on its feet again. And it's been one of the greatest honors of my life to help all of those other volunteers all across the province, from Medicine Hat to Fort McMurray to Grand Prairie, and all the points in between, to help the party get to where we are today. So many thanks to those people. And you know, we've come a long way. We have, of the 87 ridings, all 87 constituency associations are functioning and have active boards. That's a huge achievement for a political party in this province. No other party has 87 ridings functioning, so I'm very proud of that. I'm very proud that we have paid off half of the $1.5 million debt that was left from the campaign. That again was a massive achievement undertaken by mostly volunteers. After the campaign, we went from 12 paid staff to 1, so we rely heavily on people like you to help the party. I'm also very proud of our caucus. They're kind of dubbed the effective opposition because they're thoughtful, They bring a lot of substance to the legislature, and they've helped keep the NDP's feet to the fire. But we need to do more, and that's what's brought us to today. This leadership race is a chance for us to not only pick the leader of our party, but the next future premier of the province. And we have 3 very accomplished men who put their names forward. I hope you come and listen today with open ears about what they have to say, and that you get involved with the process, because we need your help, not just today, but after March 18th when we select the next leader. We need to come together as a party, and we need to move forward to the next election. So that's my 2 bits. Please come and see me after if you'd like to say a few words. And I'd like to now introduce our moderator, Glenn Allen, to the stage. Glenn, are you? I can't see you there. Glenn is an instructor at Medicine Hat College. He is a longtime volunteer in Medicine Hat. He serves on many boards. He's been involved in many areas of the community, including the banking industry, personal banking, agricultural lending, commercial and corporate lending, and he's accepted the role of Manager of Agricultural Services for Alberta with BMO, eventually taking over as an area manager for personal and commercial banking with the bank. He grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. He's also been involved in a variety of commercial ventures, including a partnership in a large turkey farm for 10 years, a partner in a real estate investment company, and owner and operator of a small marketing and promotions business. So he knows a lot about business and getting Alberta back on track with that Alberta Advantage. And many thanks to you, Glenn, for coming tonight. And he will explain the kind of the rules and how the evening will go. And sit back and relax. Thank you, and welcome to our debate in Medicine Hat.
Thank you, Catherine, and welcome everyone to the Progressive Conservative Leadership Debate at Medicine Hat College. I feel there's tremendous value in thoughtful discussion and respectful debate, and I'm honored to be part of this process. The rules have been developed by the Debate Organizing Committee and agreed upon by their candidates. The rules are as follows. The order of seating, opening statements and closing statements, and question responses were drawn before the debate. To begin, each candidate will get a 3-minute opening statement. This will be followed by questions selected by the debate organizers and asked only by the moderator. Neither myself nor the candidates were aware of the questions until just now. Each round will rotate to the next candidate to answer first. Each candidate will get up to 2 minutes to answer the question. Then a 1-minute rebuttal will be allowed by each candidate in the same order as they answered the question. Candidates may pass on a rebuttal should they wish. After the rebuttals, the last 3 minutes of each question time allotment will be an open debate between the candidates managed by myself. It is expected the candidates will be respectful of each other and their allotted time in making the points. The moderator may interject at any time to ensure all candidates have a chance to speak. The final question will be followed by closing statements, which will be limited to 2 minutes. Timers will be in the front audience facing the candidates. A yellow signal will indicate that 15 seconds are remaining. A red signal will indicate that their time is up. I will interject as required if the candidates go over their allotted time to answer a question. Candidates, those are the rules you agreed upon. We also ask that the audience be respectful. This is your chance to hear from your leadership candidates. If you're upset with me as moderator, I'm used to that. I was a banker for 20 years and I'm used to people disliking me. Then, just to be sure, I ran as a Liberal federal candidate in Southern Alberta. So I've had lots of practice. So from the draw conducted earlier today, the first opening statement goes to Mr. Jason Kenney, followed by Dr. Richard Starkey, and concluded by Mr. Byron Nelson. They will be presenting from the podium their opening statements. So please begin.
Whoops. Thank you very much, Glenn. Thank you all for being here and the commitment to the future of our province that your presence represents. Let me begin with an apology. I just learned on the way in that there was an event beforehand I didn't know about. It wasn't on my schedule. I take responsibility for that, and to make up for it, I will stick around as long as anybody wants to chat afterwards. You know, it's remarkable that we are in the 5th largest city in Alberta, to which our premier has not been once in the 20 months that she has been in office. I'm proud to have been in Medicine Hat 7 times since starting this campaign last July, and look forward to being back many more times. You know, in 1912, a man named Robert McKelvey Smiley moved his Irish family of 12 to Medicine Hat to be a blacksmith here. He was my great-grandfather, and my grandmother grew up in that household, that jammed Irish household here by the river in Medicine Hat. He went back overseas to help fight in the First World War. But what drew Robert McKelvey Smiley to Medicine Hat is the same thing that has drawn generations of new Albertans from every corner of the earth to this province as a place of opportunity, a place where if you work hard, you can achieve your dreams. That's why I believe Alberta isn't just a random place on the map. It is an idea. It is the beating heart of free enterprise in Canada. It is a place where we believe in the creative power of a free economy and fiscal and personal responsibility, in being a caring and compassionate society. But we understand that we cannot redistribute wealth and take care of those unable to care for themselves unless we create wealth in the first place. But that idea of Alberta is under attack right now from an ideological, socialist government that does not understand our province's values and that is inflicting great damage on our economy. I believe we cannot afford to take the risk of a second NDP term, and I cannot conceive of what could possibly justify taking that risk. And so I am proposing a path of unity, to bury the hatchet and look to the future rather than dwell on the decade of division, to come together between two parties that are voting identically in the legislature 90% of the time, and who already are combined at the federal level. Glenn Mott's won 70% of the popular vote here in the recent federal by-election in Medicine Hat constituency. And yet we have an NDP MLA here in Medicine Hat who doesn't represent the values of this constituency. So I think it's time for us to come together as Albertans to ensure that we defeat this destructive socialist government in the next election based on our long-standing common Alberta values, and that we renew the Alberta advantage and get our province back on track. I look forward to discussing this with you throughout the evening. Thanks very much.
Mr. Kenny, Dr. Starkey.
Well, thank you, Glenn, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. 4 months ago, my campaign tour made its first stop here in Medicine Hat. And since then, I've crisscrossed our province, and I'm hearing a message from Albertans clearly and consistently. Get on with the job of working to defeat the NDP in the next election. With people losing their jobs, their homes, and their hope, they are tired of what they are seeing from this government, and they're scared of what our province will look like if the NDP wins a second term. Albertans are looking to us to lead us from this winter of NDP discontent. The question has become, which path do we take? One proposal would have us squandering the next 2 years performing a series of political gymnastics required by law to create a new political party. Now, as I have pointed out from the beginning, this scheme is risky and will take much precious time we don't have. Last week, Brian Jean agreed that the Unity Plan would take too long, cost too much, and leave Albertans with Alberta Conservatives vulnerable to a snap election called by Rachel Notley. When the Unity Plan falters, we will hand the NDP the next election on a silver platter. Albertans want a better alternative. Last week, I proposed a simpler, less risky plan, one that doesn't require two existing political parties to self-destruct. My common sense plan calls for cooperation between the Progressive Conservative and Wild Rose parties. Out of respect for the Wild Rose, I deliberately didn't set out a series of preconditions. That's not how you build a trust relationship. Our cooperation would take many forms. It could take a form, for example, as not competing in certain constituencies, supporting each other in a minority government situation, or forming a coalition. Any agreement would need to be ratified by the grassroots membership of both parties. Each party would retain its own principles, policies, and financial assets. Most important, it would eliminate the risk of vote splitting. Each party could begin preparing for the next election immediately. Let's not give the NDP a single day's head start. Now, I've been a member of the Progressive Conservative Party for over 4 decades, and I firmly believe our values and principles, they are Alberta's values and principles. For 12 consecutive elections, we earned the support of Albertans by living those values. Hard work, compassion, integrity, and respect. After less than 2 years of NDP rule, Albertans are already looking for a different government. They will support the party with common sense policies, outstanding candidates, and strong visionary leadership. And leadership is what this race is all about. I ask for your support to become the next leader of your Progressive Conservative Party of Alberta.
Thank you, everybody. Leadership elections are all about principles. And the most important, the most vital principle of the PC party is an open party accessible to all. The party's now come to a fork in the road, and let's not be fooled. The choice is whether to continue with this party or destroy it. Whether we want to be members of the PC party or members of Wildrose version 2.0. Because last week, Brian Jean indicated his thoughts very clearly. The unity of Conservatives in Alberta was only to happen under the Wildrose Party. Their bylaws, their constitution, their principles. And this week, they let us know that they've already opened up nominations for the Wildrose Party for the 2019 election, and their first one is happening this very month. That plan by Brian Jean is not a merger of equals, it's a takeover. And yet you, the membership of this party, have told us for 40 plus years that the PC guiding principles are responsible for our successes. Yes, unquestionably, we made some big mistakes in recent years, but the goal of a political party has to be to grow and develop and to learn such that it meets the needs of its members and the province. Now, we all believe in fiscal conservatism, and we're all angry at what the NDP has done in under 2 short years, and some of us are even scared of what the future holds. And my friend Mr. Kenny says he's going to do some magical trick to bring Conservatives together. But like all magic tricks, and we'll talk about this one doesn't stand up to scrutiny. It's an easy soundbite, but it doesn't work under Alberta's election laws, and it just got torpedoed by Brian Jean, his friend from Ottawa. But I want to be the leader of a party that believes in the successes of Albertans, that picks itself up, shakes off the dirt and nastiness, and gets back to governing according to the principles to make this the land of opportunity again. Now, I urge you all to take a look at what the 3 of us are suggesting. One of my friends is promoting the disillusion of our history and successes. One of my friends has a good plan still in formulation stage. But Albertans want a party that has its interests at heart. They're tired of exploitation, instability, and incoherence. They loathe the corruption and cronyism of backroom deals, and they want a leader that can bring the PC party back into a positive spotlight and win the next provincial election. And I, Byron Nelson, am that leader. As a long-standing 25-year member of the PC party, I believe in the guiding principles of our party. I believe in the many years of hard work and commitment that, as Catherine said, each and every one of us has given. I believe in the principles that brought my family here in the first place and have kept us here for 6 generations. And I refuse to believe that we need to be absorbed into Wildrose version 2.0 or that we need to duct tape 2 broken parties together. That's not in Alberta's best interest and will not form the basis to beat the NDP in 2019. I believe there's a home for everyone here, and my home is in the PC Party of Alberta. I look forward to this debate. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates. Now, from the draw conducted earlier, the first question will start with Dr. Richard Starkey, followed by Mr. Jason Kenney, and concluded by Mr. Byron Nelson. Subsequent questions will be answered in a rotating fashion per the seating arrangement. So we'll begin now. Question 1 of 14. Why should members support you to become the next leader of the PC party? How would you rebuild trust and respect, grow the membership, and improve the party's finances before the next election? Dr. Starkey.
Well, thank you, Glenn. And really, that is the fundamental question of this leadership contest. Now, specifically, I have said that I bring things to the table that I believe Albertans are looking for. First, I have experience both as a businessman, 30 years running a business in Lloydminster, an award-winning business. A community leader, I was active in many facets of community life in Lloydminster. And finally, I have political experience, both at the municipal level. I served 2 terms on Lloydminster City Council, and I've also served now for 5 years in the provincial government, including time as a cabinet minister. The second reason, and it addresses very much the secondary question, is how do you rebuild trust? You rebuild trust by setting tone from the top. Now, as I said, I ran a business. It was a veterinary hospital, and veterinary hospitals are built on trust of your clients. We can't advertise. It's all done by word of mouth. And ask anyone who has been one of my clients in the past. Ask them if you can trust what Richard Starkey has to say to them. Ask, for that matter, my colleagues in the legislature. Ask them if I can be trusted. And I think you will come to hear that I am someone who's trustworthy and will rebuild the sense of trust of the PC party. The third reason is I feel that I can speak on behalf of all Albertans. I believe that I can address some of the artificial divides between north and south, between Calgary and Edmonton, and between rural and urban. I grew up in the city of Edmonton, and I've lived in rural Alberta the last 30 years, and I'm the only candidate that has both rural and urban in my constituency. Finally, constituency. I'm the only candidate who's currently in the legislature. On March the 20th, I can start asking Rachel Notley the kinds of questions you want to have asked of our Premier. I can start asking the kinds of things that people expect to be heard in the legislature, and I can begin to propose alternatives to the current government to demonstrate that we are once again a party ready and able and willing to take on the government of Alberta.
Thank you. Mr. Green.
Thank you. First of all, and I think I want to commend Richard for his public service and his great record, and I certainly trust him. Although we don't agree on everything, both of these are good Albertans who are here for all of the right reasons. I'm here because I believe that this party fundamentally lost the trust of Albertans, which is why half of its traditional supporters left it. And as I've done over 600 events in the last 7 months in every corner of the province, I hear again and again people say they were lifetime PCs, but the party became arrogant and got off track, and they're not coming back. So I think we need to be honest with ourselves and recognize that we've incurred serious damage to our reputation. But just as the Wildrose Party has made mistakes and has limitations, but if you look at what happened in this province in October of 2015, the federal Conservative Party, the result of a merger very similar to the one that I am proposing, won 60% of the popular vote and 1.2 million votes, 3 times more than PCs or Wildrose. So I think that makes perfect sense to try to rebuild that coalition, but at the provincial level. In terms of trust, I can tell you that every single federal member of parliament with whom I work, with one exception, Brian Jean, is supporting my leadership campaign right now. So that tells you the people that know me best and worked with me seem to think that I have their trust. And in terms of membership and funding, which is critical for renewal and winning the next election, I'm pleased to tell you that our campaign has sold over 10,000 memberships to people to join the PC party, to participate in this process, and raised more in the last 6 months of 2016 than any provincial political party. That demonstrates there is huge and growing grassroots demand and momentum for unity so that we don't risk a second NDP term.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, and I echo Jason's comments. I think we all think highly of each other up on this stage, and we're happy, and I'm honored to be running with Richard and Jason as much as I'm against them. That maybe sounded different than I intended, but let me tell you why. And that's because I'm a 5th generation Albertan. I'm a 25-year member of the PC party. I'm a lawyer in Calgary. I have my own law firm, which is a small business, and I'm a father. That wraps up, I bet, somehow everybody in this room. I feel, and I'm representative, I think of most people that are members of the PC party and ever were members of the PC party. Never been a paid person. I've always been a volunteer. I have licked stamps and envelopes, put up lawn signs, door knocked, phoned in every, certainly part of southern Alberta at the very least. I've developed relationships, and I know what this party's about. And where we went wrong, and I was a candidate in the last election, where we went wrong leading up to 2015 is that this party, and by the way, this stuff's on my website at firingforalberta.ca, little drinking game joke there. Where we went wrong is we lost connection with the members of this party long before May 5th, 2015. And as a result, we lost connection with the people of Alberta. That's what we have to do to rebuild this party. Everybody on this stage has the same idea. Everybody in this room has the same idea. We want to see the NDP gone. But the way I'm going to do it is by getting out to Albertans, community by community, person by person. It's a lot of hard work, rural and urban, and getting out there and meeting people and talking to them and building their trust back. Where we lost it was losing the connection with those people. We will get it back by rebuilding the connection with those people. That's what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Rebuttal will go in the same order as the question was answered, so we'll start with Dr. Starkey.
Well, thank you, Glenn. I wanted to just take a moment to talk a little bit about this off-coded statistic of us voting the same as the Wild Rose 90% of the time. That does not indicate any commonality of policy. That indicates a commonality of dislike for the current government. And I would suggest to you that that's only common sense. Not only do we vote commonly with the Wild Rose, but often with the Alberta Party and even with the Liberals. Now, when you can get all four opposition parties agreeing on the same thing, you know the government is doing something seriously wrong. And look at the past record. In the 28th legislature, when the Wild Rose was the official opposition, the NDP were still in opposition, the Wild Rose and the NDP voted together 90% of the time. But nobody was suggesting that those two parties should merge. When we were in government and the Wild Rose was in opposition, they voted against us 90% of the time. So the statistic of voting together 90% of the time is simply a fallacy, that somehow indicates a commonality of
Thank you, Mr. Kenny. Or, I'm sorry, Dr. Starkey. Mr. Kenny.
Reasonably confused. So on that point, first of all, there is no major issue right now in which these two parties disagree. They are voting the same way for the same reasons. And they're voting positively for each other's amendments 100% of the time.
No.
Now, when we talk about that's the Manning Center report, it's online, you can look at it. When you talk about trust, how do you rebuild trust? Well, why did this party lose trust? The word I hear most often to describe the loss of trust is the word arrogance. What's the remedy to arrogance? I think it's humility. It doesn't mean uttering the word, it means actually actively humbling yourself and admitting you've been wrong and listening to people and following their lead. Instead of top-down leadership, bottom-up grassroots democracy. 80% of grassroots PC voters have told pollsters recently they want the way of unity. I think it would be arrogant and wrong for leaders to tell them that they are wrong. I propose a referendum where we let the grassroots decide.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
the ultimate
Kennedy.
expression of humility.
Well, in continuing this discussion, what I know is that the remedy to arrogance isn't waving the white flag. It isn't shutting down the single greatest political party that this province has ever known. And I say that as a fifth-generation Albertan. That my parents, my family, all four corners of my family came to this province in the early 1900s because they thought they could do better here. And it's been very good to my family over the intervening times. And I hope that my children will continue to raise here. But I'll tell you what, the best time for my family has been the 44 years in this province's history that there was a PC government. No question we made mistakes, but we get back, as I said, by reconnecting with the people of this province. People like all of us in this room. Let's reconnect. Thank you.
Now we'll have 3 minutes of open debate.
Well, Glenn, I'd just like to say real briefly that, to say that there's no substantive issue that we disagree on is simply not true. I'm in the legislature and I know what we disagree on. We disagree, for example, on MLA recall. My progressive conservative colleagues voted against MLA recall. We have recall now. It's called the general election. It happens once every 4 years. We also disagree on borrowing for debt. The PC party believes in controlled borrowing for long-term capital projects in order to allow for an orderly construction of capital projects. The Wild Rose Caucus, led by Mr. Fildebrand, has said you shouldn't borrow to build schools because schools don't make money. There's a fundamental difference there. The final one that I think indicates specifically a difference is when we were debating the private member's bill on allowing women who are in abusive situations to break their lease. The Wild Rose introduced an amendment that would require these women in these difficult circumstances to go get a statutory declaration from a lawyer stating that they were in an abusive relationship to allow them to break the lease.
Thank you, Dr. Starkey. Any further comments? Okay.
So it's about a minute each.
Roughly a minute each is the plan.
Sure. So, all right. You know, as I go around the province, people don't tell me that we should risk a second NDP term because Alberta Conservatives have different views on recall. You know what we used to do? For 4 decades, when all the Wild Roses were in the PC party, we used to settle those differences internally. And that's what we've done federally since bringing together the two parties in 2003 in the federal merger that was endorsed. When Byron talks about destroying the party and so forth, that merger was endorsed by over 90% of the grassroots. The fundamental difference between my view and that of my esteemed colleagues here is this. I think you should decide the future. You should decide as grassroots members whether or not we pursue unity. These two fine gentlemen think that they should decide, that the party leadership should tell the grassroots what to think. I think it's time for the grassroots to tell the party leadership what to do, and so I'm asking you for permission to let you decide in a party referendum on the way forward.
I always say that I'm not offended as a longtime member of this party that's never been paid to be so. I'm not offended by the concept of us discussing things. I wasn't offended certainly last May when this party discussed at its AGM whether we should rebuild or dissolve or seek merger. Overwhelmingly, at that time at least, we decided we were going to carry on and rebuild the party. I'm not offended by the discussion. What I worry about, and this is me as a lawyer, is I look at the path laid out in front of us and I see at the end of the path Rachel Notley standing on the steps of the legislature. It's not because the decision's offensive. It's because at the end of this race, we're going to have 2 short years. You can see what the Wild Rose is doing. They're certainly no fools. No one would ever say that. They're already nominating candidates for 2019 because they want to be ready. Brian Jean says that he wants to step down as leader this summer if there's going to be some merger. We won't even be discussing the beginning of the beginning until next November at our AGM scheduled in Red Deer. It's okay to talk about it, but let's not re-elect Rachel Notley. Let's
Thank you,
rebuild.
Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
So question number 2 to the candidates. How do you propose balancing economic development with the environment? How will you work with First Nations, and what actions, if any, should the government of Alberta take if the federal government imposes a national carbon tax around climate change? And we start with Mr. Kenny. This is
3 distinct questions in 2 minutes? Okay. Carbon tax. If I'm Premier of Alberta, the bill number 1 in the legislature will be the Carbon Tax Repeal Act. If Justin Trudeau then tries to impose his federal carbon tax on us, I will join Premier Brad Wall in suing the federal government for violating our constitutional jurisdiction. Simple. Because we need an Alberta government that once again stands up for our province. By the way, let me say, thank God we do have a Premier standing up for Alberta. Thank you, Brad Wall. And right now we have a provincial government that's acting like a doormat for Ottawa. We need the same kind of leadership in standing up to overreach by an Ottawa Liberal government that Peter Lougheed gave us in the 1970s and 80s. On the question of engaging Aboriginal communities, I think the key factor is working with the federal government and our First Nations communities on skills development and education so that young Aboriginals can fully participate in prosperity in our economy. That has to be the way forward, is economic integration and success, as many of our First Nations communities with thoughtful leaders like the Fort Mackay Band up north have done. On economic diversification, which was the first question, the first rule of diversification is first do no harm. What this NDP government is doing, for example, with its creating investor uncertainty, its massive tax increases, and the pending huge increases in power prices, is making it less likely that people will invest in Alberta through manufacturing, value-added, and food processing. Look at all the greenhouses in southeast Alberta. Between the carbon tax adding tens of thousands of dollars of costs, the 50% increase in the minimum wage for low-skilled labor, and the pending huge power price costs, many of the greenhouses in southeast Alberta tell me that they may have to shut their doors. So the first step in diversification is to stop doing harm and to attract investment by restoring the Alberta advantage with some of the most competitive tax rates in North America.
Thank you, Mr. King. Mr. Nelson.
Well, I also will endeavor to squeeze answers those 3 questions within 2 minutes, the best of my ability. On the in that order, on the economic development issue and dealing with the environment, something I've talked about as I've traveled around Alberta is that looking at the way that we're dealing with carbon emission reduction right now in the province is a classic example of NDP versus PC. And I'm purposely excluding other parties, but the NDP look at this issue and say we want to reduce carbon emissions. And the way we do that is we eliminate jobs, we eliminate industries, and we eliminate money from the economy of Alberta. And what we should really do is take us back to those great times in humanity known as the Middle Ages and make energy really damn expensive for all of us. The way that PC, certainly the way I look at it as a longtime PC, is that actually we can achieve emission reduction by growing the economy, by creating industry, by creating technology, by creating jobs. That's how PCs look at these things. That's why it's been the greatest place to live in the world for the past quarter century plus. What we can do is we can actually do what we're doing in the oil sands and create the cleanest energy extraction for oil sands or bitumen production in the world. We can create industries, and we are doing that actually provide, in 2 minutes I can't possibly provide any examples, but are reducing the amount of energy we use on things like lights and the other things that we use as part of our daily life. I'm sure I've got about 30 seconds, so I'll say really quickly on the carbon tax. I haven't seen very many legal opinions that say that Justin Trudeau doesn't have the power to introduce a federal carbon tax. It's great to stand in your chair and yell. I want to know how many legal fees you'd have to piss away to do that. But we have to be strong. And so my advocation, the way I advocate doing that is implementing the carbon tax as we have it now within our structure. So if I paid $1,000 in total tax to the provincial government December 31st, I pay $1,000 on January 1st. We hide it within our current tax structure. Thank you.
Dr. Starkey.
We're going to try it this way. First of all, let me start with the carbon tax. I've been very clear. I voted against the carbon tax in the legislature. I debated against the carbon tax, and I would repeal the NDP's carbon tax. Now, as far as what would happen if Justin Trudeau brought one in, certainly we could investigate the possibility of challenging it in court, but I think Byron brings up a good point. What is the cost of doing that? What is the likelihood of success? If it's simply a token gesture that is going to end up in failure, then you have to say, okay, what are we going to do to create a made in Alberta plan that keeps the revenues in Alberta and is revenue neutral? British Columbia has been doing that for a number of years, and the British Columbia economy continues to move forward. Balancing economic development and environmental stewardship is something that we are no stranger to. Alberta has some of the best record in terms of developing high environmental standards for our energy industry. The problem is, nobody knows about it. Our tailings pond rehabilitation technology, the things that we've done in the areas all around our province where there is oil and gas development are remarkable. They're world leading. Some of the policies that we developed. We were the first jurisdiction in North America that placed a price on carbon in 2007 with our specified gas emitters regulation. That is a mechanism that can be used, once again, to reduce our overall carbon footprint without damaging our economy. And finally, involvement of First Nations. As tourism minister, this is something I had a great privilege of being involved with, and I would continue to involve in. Many of our First Nations are wanting to develop strategic partnerships with buildings, for example, with industry rather. For example, the Frog Lake First Nation, near my part of the province, has done this successfully and has put young Aboriginal employees to work, given them skill development, given them training, and it has been something that has been a win-win-win for both the First Nations community and industry and the province, and I would seek to expand those sorts of arrangements and see that they go right across the province.
Thank you. So for rebuttal, we're going in the same order. So we'll start with Mr. Byrne.
Well, you can hear.
No, they can't.
No, they can't. You can hear a disagreement here about how to approach Justin Trudeau's carbon tax. And I understand why. My two colleagues here have both expressed openness to carbon taxes. Richard said in September that, quotes, a carbon tax, whatever you want to call it, that can be applied judiciously at the correct timing, can be a useful piece of public policy. And Byron has said, I'm in favor of a carbon tax so long as it's entirely revenue neutral. Now, those are legitimate views. I happen to disagree with them. But that's why they apparently are willing to fold in front of a federal imposition. Bradwell has a very strong constitutional case to make, which is that this is not a de facto tax, it is a de facto environmental regulation and therefore belongs in provincial jurisdiction, and is therefore a constitutional violation of the federal government to impose it on us. Now, is it a slam dunk argument? No, but it's certainly one worth fighting. And I'll tell you, Peter Lougheed wouldn't stand back and say, well, we might not win in court, and we really kind of secretly suppose a carbon tax, so we'll do it anyway. No, we need a government that will stand up for Alberta. We will be the only major oil and gas producer in the world to have imposed such a tax on ourselves. We can't do that.
the second message, I guess I'm running against Brad Wall. No, I tease. We tease each other out here. So we're, well, I thought it was you or I. So we'll fix those, salt the records. You know, I have a lengthy environmental platform on my website, which is www.byronforalberta.ca. And I plug that enough that people start drinking when I do that. But yeah, I think Jason has said this is an area where we have a significant difference of opinion. And in my view, I can tell you when we get to fiscal questions, assuming we do, that the Alberta government doubled its spending between 2000 and 2010. And this is how politicians do that. Right? This is how they take the taxes that we all pay. They go and say, you know what, it's important that I shake my fist at Ottawa, so I'm going to blow $1 million on a fruitless lawsuit. I can't do that in my business, right? I can't yell or turn red-faced or anything and take money away. I see a problem, I fix it. That's why on my website, byronforalberta.ca, the environmental package says, put it within the current tax system.
Thank you. Dr. Starkey.
Well, I think we have to acknowledge what is realistic. I'm not a lawyer, okay? I'm sort of proud of that. I'm not a lawyer, I'm a veterinarian. And so I don't pretend to be an expert on constitutional law. And again, I would rely on people in Byron's line of work to give us the required advice with regards to this. And we would take that advice. And I think, you know, do we want to fight Trudeau on any particular issues that are of benefit to Alberta? Yes, of course we would. For example, come 2019, I would want to be fighting for a fair equalization formula for Alberta. That is something that we can do, and that is something that we should be doing, and Brad Wall is also doing that. So, as I said before, when we're talking about economic development, though, and environmental protection, we have to build on our successes. And one of the areas that we're successful is developing technology for overall reduction of greenhouse gases. Now, it is well known that Canada produces a relatively small percentage of worldwide, 1.6%. We need to work to sell that technology worldwide. Thank you.
Now we'll turn to open debate. Again, thanks for the candidates to speak.
Again, I think that the posture you take dealing with a Trudeau government in Ottawa isn't by surrendering or admitting defeat before you've begun. There is a compelling case to be made against the federal imposition of a carbon tax, and we should make it. Because, you know, this fashionable idea that these taxes are the wave of the future is contrary to reality. Australia just repealed their carbon tax. The French socialists have just done a 180 on their intended carbon tax. The greenest voters in the US and Washington State just repudiated a carbon tax in a referendum. One of our NDP ministers fibbed about that. She said Washington State was imposing a carbon tax. No, minister. They just repudiated one in a referendum, and we Albertans would like the right to do the same thing. And if Justin Trudeau comes along and imposes a carbon tax on us that will undermine our core industry, that will impose massive costs on average, ordinary working families, we need to stand up and fight for Albertans.
Thank you.
I agree with something Jason said that's on that same website again. And that's that carbon taxes do not impact demand on gasoline or natural gas. This is an ineffective way to deal with it. I say this to everybody I go, does everybody remember that when Prentice was premier, he increased the provincial gas tax from 9 to 13 cents? And the answer, I'm sure, is no. Nobody remembers that unless they've heard me say this before. That's a 4-cent gas tax, and I've never heard anyone suggest that impacted the demand of gas in this province. But magically, this 4.48 cents is going to solve the world. Right? No, it's not going to. That's not going to happen. But when you're faced with a challenge, as I say, we can put it within our overall tax structure, or we can fight it futilely. And I'm a lawyer. People ask me for advice on these type of problems all the time. And sometimes you fight, and sometimes you work with the problem. This is when we work with the problem, so we don't have Justin Trudeau sticking something down our throat, because that's where we would be.
Thank you, Mr. Nelson. Dr. Starkey.
Well, I want to be clear that I'm opposed to the carbon tax. I want to make that very clear. And if you aren't sure of that, you can go back through hamster. Boy, the veterinarian's tripping over his word. Hansard is what it's called. It's where all the debates are recorded. And I spoke out against the carbon tax specifically because the NDP could not demonstrate that it would have any positive effect on our environment. And they also couldn't affect that it wouldn't have a negative effect on our economy. They failed on both those counts, and when we repeatedly pressed the NDP to show us their documentation that they've done analyses, that they've done economic impact statements, they could not and they would not. And so I'm opposed to a carbon tax in Alberta because there's no proof that it would even produce the desired effect of improvements to our environment. And what we also don't know is they don't know just exactly how much damage it's going to do to our economy. And I can tell you there are numerous sectors, and they've been mentioned, that are of our economy that would suffer as a result of this carbon tax.
Thank you. Question number 3. You're in Medicine Hat, the city that ended homelessness. With over 20,000 not-for-profit and social agencies in Alberta, how would you promote and reward those producing exceptional outcomes and review funding for those that are not? We'll begin with Mr. Nelson.
So I suggest every time I go that I have quite a long personal history with volunteering. So this is something that's close to my heart. And it's tough when the time, and I just went out as being the head of Shriners Hospitals for Children in Southern Alberta, and we have a lot of very active Shriners here in Medicine Hat, and I get to come to Medicine Hat for a number of corn roasts and stuff like that. It's difficult to run that's a charity, but also we have a society component to it when times are tough. And I have my children in sports, and it's tough to find volunteers. Yet all of those are good, all those are important aspects of society. You need kids' sports teams, you need people to provide free healthcare at no cost to the families of patients. So how do you do that? And there's been an idea floating around that I want to say I firmly as a volunteer oppose, and that's that we assist and promote societies or charities by allowing the time that you volunteer to be turned into a tax receipt. I'm not in favor of that. I think it's an idea that comes from a good place, but actually could have fairly unpleasant results. We're just adding more red tape, more things. But I want to encourage people to volunteer. It also can be very expensive. And so I'm the head of the Shriners Hospitals in Southern Alberta, and I will tell you that we just got a 46% increase on our property tax bill in Calgary. Now this is a bloody charity that takes sick children to hospitals around North America. That's tough to do. So, admittedly, that's a city issue, and we were talking about provincial government. But overall, in addressing societies, the simple best thing you can do to promote these good organizations, which lead to a better society for all, in my opinion, is keep the costs down that it costs these things to operate. It is very difficult, and things like a $15 minimum wage and everything that's coming out of this NDP government goes against that.
Thank you.
Talk about this some more.
Dr. Starkey.
Well, thank you, Glenn. And certainly the City of Medicine Hat is to be congratulated for its landmark progress on ending homelessness in this city. I think that's the kind of thing that we can say in Alberta, that we tackle the problem and we go after it. And Medicine Hat is not alone in that regard. The City of Edmonton has a 10-year strategy to reduce and to eliminate homelessness, and they have also reduced the overall numbers of homelessness. City of Calgary, the same thing. Unless we think that homelessness is only a problem in large urban centers, it is not. Rural homelessness is also an issue. Our small rural communities are finding that in many cases, the homeless from the larger centers are moving out to rural centers and unfortunately finding themselves in a situation where they are homeless there. And it's simply because they can't afford to live in the city or they can't find accommodation. Now, as far as to address this issue, we have social service agencies right across our province that have strategies and that have committed volunteers to work with local communities, with local business people, to address the unique situation that homelessness poses in each and every community. And it's not the same in every community. There are different dynamics in every community. I know in the city of Lloydminster, we made a concerted effort to address homelessness a number of years ago, and significant progress has been made, partly because of great community support, not only from the municipal government, but also from the business community, that recognizes that if you attack the root causes of homelessness in a community, if you provide both affordable housing as well as meaningful employment, that homelessness can be addressed and can be tackled successfully. We are leading in many areas, and I talk to people who do this work right across Canada, and they commend Alberta for the work that we've done. This is something we should continue. It's certainly something we should be proud of, but we should never rest on our past successes. We should always move forward and try to address all of these issues with as forthright and as most aggressive plan as possible.
Thank you, Dr. Starkey. Mr. Keeney.
Thanks. I too want to commend the Medicine Hat and the Medicine Hat Community Housing Society for its national leadership on this. For a couple of years, I was the federal minister responsible for housing in the Department of Employment and Social Development and implemented the federal Housing First strategy, which really has taken Medicine Hat's model national through pilot funding for programs across the country. And you know, it was controversial because what it meant was taking money away from groups that were doing advocacy and politics and talking about the problem and actually creating housing for people to get them off the streets. And the data is clear. It's been demonstrated here at Medicine Hat that when you actually get people into shelter, they're not showing up in the emergency rooms. The substance abuse problems go down. The other ancillary problems related to poverty are diminished. The key is the housing and not the kind of, frankly, waste that we've too often seen in other communities in this area. So I'm proud of the work we've done federally through the Housing First initiative. And we need to expand that model, the Housing First Medicine Hat model, to every community across the province. There's a good pilot project in Calgary that's been seeing phenomenal results as well. And we need to work closely with the federal government, the provincial and federal and municipal governments together to follow the Housing First Medicine Hat model.
Thank you. So for rebuttals, we'll go in the same order. So we'll start with Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, I don't imagine we're going to rebut each other on this subject very much. Certainly given what we've heard. I said I wanted to expand, so I'll use this time to expand on what I was talking about earlier, and Jason sort of hit on it, and I agree with something that he said there in his argument, I'll call it, or his answer to that question. And that's the importance in societies and charities of actually supporting the people that are the volunteers doing the groundwork. Jason made a good point about not supporting and not seeking to support the lobbyists. I know in Shredder's Hospitals we don't have such a thing, but some do. Lobbyists or political people, but giving the assistance to people on the ground. Homelessness is an issue that is solved by people on the ground, by volunteers on the ground, and most of these societies are. So when we focus our thoughts and what we do with government policy, we have to make it, and I use the example of keeping it cheaper with property taxes, but every support we can give to people that are volunteers and workers on the ground.
Thank you.